Imagine, for a moment, waking up tomorrow without anyone around you. No one to lean on, no one to rely on. The world feels empty, even if it's full of people. The overwhelming noise of dependence on others starts to echo in your mind. We all have been there, craving validation, constantly needing someone to help us navigate our emotions, and seeking the comfort of others to define our worth. But what if I told you that the key to your greatest freedom lies in your ability to stand strong alone without being weighed down by the expectations or emotional entanglements of others? What if the pathway to true emotional independence is not just possible, but it could radically transform your life? The truth is, it's not only possible, but it's essential for your growth and mental clarity. Let's dive into the 10 keys that can set you free from emotional dependence and teach you how to live not only without anyone, but more importantly, with a sense of wholeness and self-reliance that's unshakable. The first key is understanding that you are not defined by the presence or absence of others. Too often, we believe our worth is tied to our relationships, whether they're romantic, familial, or friendships. But when you detach your identity from others, you begin to realize that you are your own greatest source of validation. It starts with knowing deep down that your value is inherent. You are enough, whether someone's around or not. When you stop seeking external validation, you'll notice a significant shift. You'll start making decisions based on what you want, not based on who's watching or what they expect. The second key is mastering the art of solitude. Now, solitude is not loneliness. In fact, loneliness comes from being disconnected from yourself. Solitude, on the other hand, is a powerful tool for growth. It's in those quiet moments when you're alone with your thoughts that you begin to discover your true desires and potential. When you learn to enjoy your own company, you stop needing others to fill that emotional void. Next, you must learn to regulate your emotions. Emotional dependence stems from the idea that others can control how you feel. This is a trap. You have the ability to control your emotional responses. You're not powerless. Through practices like mindfulness, meditation, or even simple breathing exercises, you can train your brain to respond rather than react. This makes you resilient, not just in your interactions with others, but in the face of life's challenges. The fourth key is setting boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls. They're a form of self-respect. When you set clear boundaries, you protect your emotional energy. People will naturally try to cross those lines, but remember, you control how much access they have to you. Saying no doesn't make you selfish, it makes you self-aware. You preserve your inner peace, your autonomy, and your mental clarity. The fifth key is developing self-sufficiency. This goes beyond finances or material things. Emotional self-sufficiency means being able to fill your own cup, so to speak. You're the source of your own joy. No one is responsible for your happiness, and once you accept this truth, the chains of emotional dependence start to break away. You start to depend on your own resources, your strength, your resilience, your ability to create joy and meaning in your life. The sixth key is becoming an observer of your thoughts. If you constantly allow your thoughts to control your emotions, you're living reactively. But when you learn to observe your thoughts without identifying with them, you regain control. This detachment creates space between stimulus and response. You don't need someone else's approval to feel good about yourself because you no longer rely on your thoughts to define your worth. Now, the seventh key is focusing on personal growth, not validation from others. The desire for approval from others is one of the most insidious forms of emotional dependence. Instead of seeking praise, focus on developing your skills, learning new things, and challenging yourself. Growth is the ultimate form of self-love. When you invest in yourself, you build your own confidence and resilience. That's what ultimately makes you unshakable. No one can take that away from you. The eighth key is learning to accept that disappointment is part of life. We often cling to people, relationships, or expectations, hoping they'll fulfill our emotional needs. When those things fall short, we feel devastated. But the truth is, disappointment is inevitable. What matters is how we respond. Once you accept that, you stop relying on others for your emotional stability. You build the emotional resilience to handle life's curveballs on your own. The ninth key is embracing uncertainty. When you rely on others, you want certainty in your relationships, in your life. But true freedom comes from embracing the unknown. Life is unpredictable, and when you stop trying to control every outcome, you allow yourself to be more adaptable. You stop waiting for someone else to give you answers, and instead, You start finding them within yourself. Finally, the 10th key is realizing that no one is coming to save you. The greatest form of liberation is understanding that you are responsible for your own emotional well-being. It's not anyone else's job to make you feel whole or validated. When you take full responsibility for your emotions and your happiness, you become the architect of your own life. You create your own path, free from the dependency on others, knowing that you hold the power to build something far greater than what anyone else could offer. Now, let's be clear, this doesn't mean you should shut people out. It means you should stand in your power, understanding that while relationships can enrich your life, they are not the foundation of your emotional well-being. This kind of emotional independence isn't a cold isolation, but rather a warm, empowered state where you can interact with others from a place of strength, not need. So I challenge you to look within yourself. What parts of your life are you still relying on others to define? What areas can you take responsibility for? Embrace the discomfort of growth and step into the freedom of emotional independence. Because when you do, you'll realize that you were never as alone as you thought. You were just waiting to recognize your own power. When we talk about emotional independence, the first step is to detach your identity from others. This may sound simple, but it's one of the most difficult shifts to make. We live in a society that constantly ties our value to how we're perceived by others. Whether it's our friends, family, colleagues, or even strangers, we are often conditioned to seek validation and approval from the outside world. But this is where we begin to lose our sense of self. The moment we tie our worth to someone else's opinion or approval, we start giving up control over our own emotional state. We give others the power to determine whether we feel good about ourselves or not. And in doing so, we become emotionally dependent on them. This attachment to external validation is like a trap that holds us back from personal growth. If we constantly look for others to tell us we're doing well, that we matter, or that we're worthy, we're essentially handing them the keys to our emotional health. This dependency creates a cycle of emotional highs and lows based on how others treat us, and this is something that's entirely out of our control. The real challenge, and also the liberating truth, is that your value is inherent, independent of anyone else's opinion. We need to understand that you are enough, not because someone says so, but simply because you exist. Your worth is not conditional on anyone else's approval, love, or validation. This realization changes everything. When you stop seeking validation, you stop giving others the power to dictate how you feel. It's a shift from living reactively, where every external factor influences your emotional state, to living proactively, where you define your worth on your own terms. The moment you embrace this, you become less vulnerable to the judgments, criticisms, or praises of others. You become immune to the external noise. This doesn't mean we stop valuing relationships or stop seeking meaningful connections. It means that our core emotional foundation must come from within. You should be the one who decides who you are, what you value, and what your purpose is. When you fully internalize this, you stop looking outward for approval, and instead, you start creating your own emotional stability. It's about cultivating a sense of worth that remains constant no matter what happens externally. And when you reach that point, you can engage with others from a place of strength, not need. One of the most powerful ways to free yourself from emotional dependence is through mastering solitude. Now, I want to make a clear distinction here. Solitude is not loneliness. Loneliness arises when you feel disconnected from others and, more importantly, from yourself. Solitude, on the other hand, is the conscious choice to spend time alone in a way that fosters connection with yourself. It's in solitude that you begin to uncover who you truly are, apart from the influences and expectations of others. In a world that thrives on constant connection, whether through social media, texts, emails, or just the noise of modern life, it can be difficult to find the space to truly be with yourself. Yet, it's in these quiet moments that you gain clarity. You start to hear your own thoughts, your own desires, your own needs. It's in solitude that you can really begin to listen to your body, your emotions, and your intuition. This is where you can cultivate a deeper understanding of yourself, free from the judgments or influences of anyone else. When you are constantly surrounded by others, their thoughts and emotions can begin to blur your own. You start to conform to what they expect from you, how they perceive you, and how they want you to feel. But when you choose solitude, you choose the opportunity to reconnect with the essence of who you are. It's not about being alone because you have to, but rather because you want to. This shift in mindset is what allows you to create emotional resilience. Furthermore, solitude is a powerful tool for self-reflection and personal growth. It's in those quiet moments that you can assess your life, your choices, and your values without external distractions. You can ask yourself hard questions. What do I want? What do I need? What is holding me back? This process of self-inquiry is critical for personal development. The more you understand yourself, the less dependent you become on others to fill that emotional gap. The key is to reframe solitude not as a state of isolation, but as an opportunity for expansion and growth. By embracing solitude, you give yourself the space to develop the emotional strength necessary to live independently without needing constant validation from others. Solitude becomes not just a break from the noise of the world, but a sacred time for reconnection, healing, and growth. A critical component of emotional independence is learning to regulate your emotions. This is a skill that many people overlook, thinking that emotions are simply something that happens to us, something outside our control. But the truth is, we have far more control over our emotional responses than we realize. The ability to regulate your emotions is a game changer when it comes to eliminating emotional dependence, because it allows you to take charge of your internal world, no matter what's happening externally. Think about it. How often do we find ourselves caught in an emotional reaction, whether it's anger, sadness, frustration, or anxiety? When someone or something triggers us, we feel helpless, like we're at the mercy of our emotions, and that's when dependence starts to creep in. We begin to depend on others for reassurance, comfort, or guidance to bring us back to emotional equilibrium. But when you learn how to regulate your emotions, you take back your power. You don't wait for someone else to calm you down or tell you everything will be okay. Instead, you learn the tools and techniques to do that for yourself. One of the most effective ways to regulate emotions is through mindfulness and awareness. When you're in a triggered state, your body and mind go into reactive mode. The heart rate rises, your breath becomes shallow, and your thoughts spiral out of control. But with mindfulness, you can create space between the trigger and your reaction. This pause gives you the opportunity to observe what's happening in your body and mind without immediately acting on it. This simple awareness can be incredibly powerful. It's like a light switch that turns on, allowing you to see your emotions clearly without being swept away by them. Another essential practice is breath control. The way you breathe directly influences your emotional state. Deep, slow breaths activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms your body and mind, helping you return to a state of emotional balance. When you feel stress or anxiety rising, consciously slowing down your breath can shift your entire emotional experience. By mastering these tools, you can essentially train your brain to respond to situations in a more balanced and composed way, rather than being thrown off course by external events or other people's behaviors. When you regulate your emotions, you stop depending on others to adjust your mood or stabilize your emotional state. You begin to understand that no one else is responsible for how you feel, and that emotional equilibrium comes from within. You take responsibility for your own emotional experience, and this is a powerful step toward eliminating emotional dependence. The next key to living without emotional dependence is setting boundaries. Now, when most people think about boundaries, they often envision walls or barriers that keep others out. But boundaries are not about shutting people off. Rather, they are about protecting your emotional space, your energy, and your well-being. Boundaries are a form of self-respect. They are an acknowledgement of your needs, values, and limits, and they serve to ensure that your emotional health is not compromised by others' demands or expectations. In the context of emotional independence, boundaries are absolutely essential. Without them, we are vulnerable to being drained, manipulated, or consumed by the needs and desires of others. And while we may think we're being kind or accommodating, constantly giving in to others can lead to emotional burnout, frustration, and resentment. People may start to take advantage of your willingness to always be there, always say yes, or always put their needs above your own. This is where emotional dependence takes root. You begin to rely on others' approval or validation to feel worthy or appreciated. But when you set boundaries, you protect your own emotional space, allowing you to show up as the best version of yourself without sacrificing your well-being. Setting boundaries requires clarity and assertiveness. You need to be clear with yourself about what you will and will not tolerate. This isn't always easy, especially if you spend a lot of time being people-pleasing or avoiding conflict. But when you start setting boundaries, you send a message to yourself and others that you value your own needs and emotional health. And this is incredibly empowering. It teaches you to prioritize your emotional well-being, to respect your time and energy, and to stop giving away parts of yourself that should remain protected. When you establish boundaries, you also create healthier relationships. Rather than feeling resentful or overwhelmed, you engage with others from a place of mutual respect and understanding. You can be there for people, but you don't lose yourself in the process. Boundaries help you avoid the trap of emotional dependence because you're no longer relying on others to validate or fix your emotions. You're taking responsibility for your emotional state, and in doing so, you build stronger, more balanced connections. Ultimately, setting boundaries isn't just about protecting yourself. It's about giving yourself the freedom to show up as your authentic self without the weight of external emotional demands. It's an essential tool in cultivating emotional independence, allowing you to maintain a sense of personal power and resilience no matter the situation. The fifth key to eliminating emotional dependence is developing emotional self-sufficiency. This might sound counterintuitive at first. How can you be emotionally self-sufficient when humans are inherently social beings designed for connection and interdependence? But the truth is, emotional self-sufficiency doesn't mean cutting yourself off from relationships or rejecting support. It means learning to be the primary source of your own emotional well-being. When you are emotionally self-sufficient, you don't rely on others to make you feel good, validated, or secure. You create your own emotional stability, and you stop needing others to fill the gaps in your emotional life. The reason this is so important is because emotional dependence is often rooted in the belief that our happiness or sense of self-worth is tied to other people. Whether it's a partner, a friend, or even family, we often find ourselves in situations where we are waiting for someone else to provide us with the emotional reassurance we need. When they don't, or when they disappoint us, it can throw us into a state of anxiety, insecurity, or frustration. But the reality is, no one can consistently meet all of our emotional needs. The only person who can truly be responsible for your emotional health is you. One of the most powerful ways to develop emotional self-sufficiency is by cultivating habits and practices that nourish your inner world. Meditation, journaling, and self-reflection are all essential tools for getting in touch with your own emotions and needs. Through these practices, you begin to understand the full spectrum of your emotional experiences, and you can learn how to regulate and soothe yourself without needing someone else to do it for you. For example, mindfulness meditation can help you cultivate the ability to be present with your emotions without becoming overwhelmed by them. When you can observe your feelings without judgment, you regain control over how you respond to them. Another way to become emotionally self-sufficient is by building resilience through challenges. Life is inherently filled with ups and downs, and instead of depending on others to shield you from pain or discomfort, you start viewing challenges as opportunities for growth. Each time you navigate a difficult emotion or situation on your own, you reinforce your ability to handle future challenges independently. This process builds emotional strength and resilience, further reducing your dependence on others for emotional stability. Ultimately, emotional self-sufficiency is about realizing that you are the creator of your emotional world. The more you rely on yourself to process, understand, and navigate your emotions, the less you'll need external validation to feel complete. This internal foundation is what will allow you to stand firm in your independence, knowing that your emotional well-being doesn't have to come from anyone else. It's already within you. The sixth key to emotional independence is learning to observe your thoughts rather than identify with them. This might sound simple, but it is one of the most profound shifts you can make in your life. Most of us live on autopilot, constantly believing that the thoughts in our heads are who we are, that our thoughts define us. If we think something, we often assume it's the truth, and we react accordingly. This creates a dangerous cycle of emotional dependence because we give our thoughts the power to dictate our feelings and behaviors. But in reality, thoughts are not facts, and they certainly don't need to control us. The moment you start to observe your thoughts without immediately reacting to them, you create a space between stimulus and response. This space is where true freedom lies. By learning to observe your thoughts objectively, you detach from them. You recognize that they are simply mental events that come and go, like clouds passing in the sky. They don't define you. You are the observer, not the thought itself. This is incredibly empowering because when you identify with your thoughts, they can easily trigger emotional reactions. For example, if you think, "I'm not good enough," your brain may release stress hormones that make you feel inadequate, anxious, or depressed. You then depend on others to lift you up, to reassure you, to validate you. But when you begin observing that thought, you create the possibility to challenge it. You can ask yourself, is this thought really true? Where's the evidence? How does this thought serve me? This process is a powerful tool in reducing emotional dependence because it places you in the driver's seat of your emotional experience. One technique for developing this kind of awareness is mindfulness meditation. In mindfulness, you practice observing your thoughts without judgment, simply letting them arise and pass without attaching any emotional significance to them. Over time, this practice strengthens your ability to detach from your thoughts, making it easier to regulate your emotions and avoid being swept away by negative thought patterns. You become less reactive and more resilient. The more you practice observing your thoughts, the more you realize that you are not at the mercy of every passing thought or feeling. Your emotions do not need to control you. Instead of depending on others to regulate your emotions, you develop the capacity to self-regulate. You respond to your thoughts with a calm, measured approach, and this shifts your entire emotional landscape. In essence, by observing your thoughts, you stop giving away your emotional power and start reclaiming it for yourself. This practice over time leads to an incredible sense of emotional autonomy. The seventh key to emotional independence is to focus on personal growth, not external validation. This may sound obvious, but the reality is, most of us spend a significant portion of our lives seeking approval from others. Whether it's from a partner, a boss, or even our friends and family, we often derive our sense of self-worth from what others think of us. When we depend on external validation for our sense of value, we give up control over our emotional state. Our happiness, confidence, and self-esteem become tethered to other people's opinions, and that is a sure path to emotional dependence. Now, personal growth is a fundamentally different approach. It's about prioritizing the development of your own skills, knowledge, and mindset over the need for validation. When you focus on growth, you are shifting the narrative from "I need others to approve of me" to "I am focused on becoming the best version of myself, and I measure my success by my own standards." This mindset transforms your relationship with yourself and with others. Personal growth isn't just about achieving external goals or accomplishing tasks. It's about constantly improving your inner landscape. This could mean becoming more self-aware, more compassionate, or more resilient in the face of adversity. It's about understanding your strengths and weaknesses and actively working to enhance the areas where you want to improve. The key here is that personal growth is self-directed. It's driven by your own internal desires and aspirations, not by the expectations or opinions of others. When you focus on growth, you stop relying on external praise or feedback to feel validated. Instead, your sense of accomplishment and self-worth comes from knowing that you are constantly improving, whether anyone notices or not. This creates a profound shift in how you approach life. You begin to measure success not by how others see you, but by how far you've come on your own journey. And as you continue to grow, you become less dependent on external sources of validation and more confident in your own abilities and decisions. One of the most powerful ways to foster the sense of growth is through continuous learning. Whether it's picking up a new skill, diving into a new area of knowledge, or simply pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, learning is the antidote to stagnation. The more you learn, the more you realize that your potential is not limited by what others think or say about you. You are the author of your own story, and the progress you make becomes the validation you need. When you focus on your own personal growth, you tap into an inexhaustible source of motivation and fulfillment. You no longer need others to define your success or happiness. You are the one who determines what success looks like, and that is the ultimate freedom. The eighth key to living without emotional dependence is to accept disappointment. This is one of the most transformative mindsets you can adopt, but it's also one of the most difficult. Disappointment is a universal experience. Whether it's in our relationships, careers, or personal goals, we will inevitably face moments where things don't go as planned. The difference between those who remain emotionally independent and those who fall into dependence is how they deal with that disappointment. Too often, we resist disappointment. We try to avoid it, deny it, or force it away by seeking external validation or trying to fix things immediately. But the truth is, disappointment is not something to fear. In fact, it's an inevitable part of life, and it carries important lessons if we can learn to sit with it. The more you try to avoid disappointment, the more you end up relying on other people or external circumstances to create your emotional stability. You depend on others to keep you happy, to meet your expectations, or to maintain your sense of security. But real emotional independence comes when you accept disappointment as a natural part of life and stop giving it the power to derail your emotional well-being. When you can accept disappointment, you take away its ability to control you. Instead of feeling like the world is falling apart, you develop resilience. You can acknowledge the feeling of disappointment, but you don't let it define your emotional state or dictate your actions. This ability to sit with discomfort and move through it is the foundation of emotional strength. You stop waiting for others to fix your mood or rescue you from negative feelings. Instead, you learn how to navigate your emotions with grace and self-sufficiency. This doesn't mean that disappointment feels good, nor does it mean you should suppress or ignore your emotions. It means that you allow yourself to feel disappointed, but you don't depend on someone else to alleviate that feeling. You learn to regulate your own emotional state, to find meaning and growth in difficult experiences, and to move forward despite the setback. Disappointment teaches you to reframe the situation. Instead of seeing it as a failure, you see it as a lesson and opportunity for growth, and a moment to build resilience. The more you practice accepting disappointment, the more you realize that external circumstances or other people's actions cannot determine your emotional state. You take responsibility for how you respond to life's inevitable challenges. Instead of relying on others for reassurance or emotional support, you become your own anchor. This mindset frees you from emotional dependence as you no longer tie your happiness or peace to the outcomes of external situations. Instead, you cultivate a deep internal strength that allows you to navigate disappointment and keep moving forward with confidence. The ninth key to emotional independence is to embrace uncertainty. It's human nature to want control, to seek predictability, stability, and clear answers. But the reality is, life is inherently uncertain. From our personal relationships to our careers and even our health, there are so many variables outside our control. The more we try to impose certainty in life, the more we set ourselves up for emotional distress. When we resist uncertainty, we increase our dependency on external factors to feel secure. We begin to rely on things or people to provide the predictability and safety we crave, but this is a fragile foundation. Embracing uncertainty means shifting your mindset to understand that not everything in life can or should be controlled. Instead of fearing the unknown or trying to avoid situations where you lack answers, you begin to see uncertainty as a space of possibility, growth, and opportunity. When you can approach life with an open mind and an open heart, recognizing that uncertainty is not a threat, but a part of the human experience, you liberate yourself from the need to control everything around you. This mindset is essential to emotional independence because it allows you to respond to life's unpredictability without emotional dependency on others. When things feel uncertain, most people instinctively turn to others for comfort, reassurance, or guidance. We seek certainty from outside ourselves, whether it's waiting for someone to tell us everything will be okay, or looking for approval that we're making the right decision. But by embracing uncertainty, you stop relying on others to alleviate your discomfort. You begin to trust your own ability to navigate the unknown, knowing that you have the internal resources to handle whatever comes your way. The key is to recognize that uncertainty is not synonymous with danger or failure. In fact, it's often the very space where personal growth happens. It's in the unknown that we are pushed to adapt, learn, and expand. Instead of clinging to what's familiar, we allow ourselves to step into new experiences and challenges with confidence, even if we don't have all the answers. This mindset shift from fear of the unknown to embracing it helps reduce the emotional dependence that often arises when we feel uncertain and insecure. When you embrace uncertainty, you stop waiting for others to provide you with certainty. You stop needing external reassurance to feel grounded or confident. Instead, you cultivate an internal sense of security that can withstand the unpredictable nature of life. In essence, embracing uncertainty is one of the most powerful ways to build emotional resilience and independence because it allows you to adapt and thrive without constantly depending on others to stabilize your emotional state. The 10th and final key to living without emotional dependence is to cultivate a sense of purpose. This is perhaps one of the most foundational aspects of emotional independence. When you have a clear, deeply rooted sense of purpose, you are no longer swayed by the opinions of others, the fleeting validation from external sources, or the ups and downs of your emotional life. A strong sense of purpose anchors you in who you are and what you stand for, regardless of external circumstances. It provides you with a guiding light, a reason to move forward, and an internal compass that doesn't rely on others to direct your path. Purpose is a powerful antidote to emotional dependence because it connects you to something larger than yourself. When your focus is on something meaningful, whether it's a goal, a mission, a personal project, or the impact you want to have on the world, you stop relying on others to give your life direction. You no longer seek approval or validation to feel like you are on the right track. Your purpose becomes the driving force behind your actions, and it provides you with the resilience to weather challenges and setbacks without losing your sense of self. The key to cultivating this sense of purpose is to look inward and ask yourself some difficult but essential questions. What drives me? What values are most important to me? What do I want to contribute to the world? These are not questions that can be answered overnight, but over time, you begin to uncover what truly matters to you. Purpose doesn't come from trying to please others or meet societal expectations. It comes from aligning your actions with your authentic desires and values. Once you connect with your purpose, it becomes the bedrock of your emotional well-being. Even in moments of difficulty, when relationships or external circumstances may be in turmoil, your purpose gives you the strength to keep moving forward. It allows you to step outside of the emotional drama and focus on what you control, your actions, your mindset, and the impact you want to have on the world around you. When you are deeply connected to your purpose, you realize that your happiness, sense of worth, and emotional stability no longer depend on others. They come from the fulfillment you experience in living a life aligned with your values and goals. In essence, cultivating a sense of purpose not only strengthens your emotional independence, but it also gives your life a profound sense of meaning and direction. When you live with purpose, you become less reactive to external events or people's judgments. You no longer rely on others to give you a reason to wake up every day. You find your own reasons, and in doing so, you step into a life of greater freedom and emotional resilience.